Welcome to the Manders Mindset podcast. Here you'll find both monologue and interviews of entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, and a variety of other people, where your host, Amanda Russo, will discuss her own mindset and perspective and her guest mindset and perspective on the world around us. Manders and her guests will help explain to you how shifting your mindset will shift your life.
Welcome to Manders Mindset. I'm your host, Amanda Russo, and I am so excited to be here today speaking with Tommy Kilpatrick. And we are going to delve down a little bit about credit card debt, and he's going to help us relieve some stress from that. So thank you so much for joining me, Tommy.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
So I'd love to backtrack and know, who would you say Tommy is at the core?
Who is at the core of Tommy? Wow. Okay. The essence is I'm a wonderful healer. And you have three names. You have mind, body, and soul. So I have a body name called Tommy A. Kilpatrick. But my mind is Simplicato, Concepcion Simplicato, which is Latin for simple concepts. So the way my mind works is I think, I see complexity and I try to bring it down to simplicity. And so like the complexity of credit card debt, I bring it down to be very simple things. But my soul has a name of a wonderful healer. I am a healer full of wonder. So when I do the healing, I'm the one who goes, wow, that really worked. So I actually have a background of reflexology. And so when I touch someone, I lightly touch. I can see where their pain is, through touching their hand. And then I can zero in on those areas, work out their pain, and by moving their hands or their feet. And I teach that. I was just taught a class about a month ago here in the Philippines, where I'm living now. And so a massage therapist, I connected, and she had a skin care clinic she worked at. So the skin care owner got involved in the class. So I taught a very quick class on reflexology, but I've also been trained on a very particular way of asking a body questions. And the body answers yes and no by either an arm movement called muscle testing. And there's also a pair of feet that you move back and forth. Dr. Mortar, he trains primarily chiropractors. He's since passed away, but he trains chiropractors to move the feet back and forth. And the gluteus minimus muscle moves the feet on the answer. So what we do is we search out for the cause. So before anything happens, we go to the cause and relieve that pain. And then the body then can be healed by medical or by chiropractic or acupuncture. But we have to first go to the cause. So when you ask who the core is, that's me.
Now, I'm curious, you mentioned your body name and your soul name. How did you discover these?
Well, the name was given to you. So that was what you got, so you can keep it if you want to, you can change it. The other one is you have to think about your mind and how does your mind think? How does your mind relate and stuff? What would be a name for that? And to find out who you truly are in your soul, this is what you do. Well, let me give you an example. I was at a trade show demonstrating my reflexology, and a lady across the booth came over. We started chatting. She told me right away how she was abused as a child. And I said, will you ask for that? And she went, I did not ask for that. And she stormed off and screamed and yelled at me and walked off. That's okay. She was just another exhibitor. The next morning, we were setting up for our next day trade show. She walked over to me and said, I really want to apologize for what I said to you yesterday, but I couldn't sleep last night. What did you mean by that? And I said, I have not experienced child abuse. You have. So for some reason, you have experienced it. You can relate to women that I can't connect to them. I had no idea. It's not my experience, but it was yours and it was your choice. And she said, and I said, well, who are you? She goes, I don't know. I said, would you like to know? Because I don't push myself on people. She said, yes, I would. I said, okay, close your eyes. And we're just standing up right next to each other in a trade show before it started. So a little bit quiet. And I said, now look deep down into your uterus. Now for a man, they look into their prostate. Okay. So that's the difference between a man and a woman, is the body part inside. So they look down and I say, it's going to be dark and black. So I make it all dark and black. And I don't need you to talk, just wiggle your finger. So wiggle your finger when you see total darkness and blackness inside your uterus. So I waited a few minutes and she saw that visually. It's totally dark in her uterus. And then she waved her finger. I said, okay, there's going to be a little bit of a light, and just wait and look for that light. It could be anywhere, right, left, up, down. Just look around. You'll see a little pinpoint of light. And when you see that, wiggle your finger. So she wiggled her finger. So I said, look, now make that a little bit brighter, make it larger, more brightness. And then now you're going to start to see something. And once you see something, wiggle your finger. And then so she waited, she looked, she waited, she looked with her eyes closed. And she wiggled her finger. I said, okay, what do you see? She says, I see hands. I went, hands? Oh, what kind of hands? She said, healing hands. I said, open your eyes up. Hi, healing hands. I'm a wonderful healer. I have met other people like a slice of Zen. I have met a bridge builder. I have met a soul in transition standing on the rock of Gibraltar. So these are who you really are. So that you just take a few minutes, you can do it yourself, but it kind of helps having someone guide you through. And it's not anybody trained. It's just logical. What do you see? Tell me more, describe it more. And that's who they are as their soul. So that's how you can find out, Amanda, who you are. Who are you?
Where did you come upon this? How did you discover this? That's probably a long answer.
Here in the language is Wallako Caballo. I speak Heliano now, so I don't know. Doesn't come to my brain. No one really taught me this. I taught classes for many years of reflexology on a higher level, not just massaging the hands and feet, but actually seeing the human body alive through your hands and through your feet. So I would teach some energy work. So there must have been a lot of people. I've had a lot of classes. So someone must have shared that with me in some way. So, or maybe we had an exercise that we did that. But yeah, I was teaching a class once and I had two ladies in the class and they were working on my feet. So I was giving them feedback and they were in a highest level, which was the energy work. And one said, yeah, did you see that? She says, yeah, I saw that. And I said, what'd you see? She said, you have a spirit guide. There are actually two. There's this huge Egyptian like guide. I never see them, but I feel, but I'm more kinesthetic. I just don't see things. I don't see auras. I don't see energy, but I kind of feel it. So I'll go up to somebody. I'll bypass that one. So we were at a trade show once and I had one of my instructors all of a sudden started crying. And I sat down next to her and I said, what happened? She said, her. And I went, what? She said, her. I said, you touched her? The one lady in the wheelchair. I walked up to that and I went, oh no, bad news. So I avoided her, but she went up to people and demonstrated some reflexology. The lady said, do my mom. Well, would you like to do my mom? She says, okay. She picked up this little lady, evil lady. She picked up her hand. All of a sudden felt the energy, the evilness go inside her body and she had to sit down. So it took a little while to bring her back online in a sense to keep working. So, but that was the thing where you need to put a shield up and you have to, first of all, avoid people who've got that energy that don't comply with you, let's say. So you can call it evil, you can call it just a different energy source, but I feel those people, I don't go towards them. I go towards like people like you, people who are doing things, producing food, raising animals, helping people. So that's who I want to be around.
I get it. I'd love if we could transition a tad. Can you take us down memory lane? Tell us a little bit about your childhood, upbringing, family dynamic, however deep you want to take that.
Sure. I was born in Long Beach, California. So I'm a Californian. I thought I'd always live there and always be there. And I had a wonderful childhood. I had a dad who was a CPA and a mom who was a stay-at-home mom. And I had two older brothers. And they were so much older than me that when I was 10, I was baking and shipping cookies to Vietnam. So my brother was on an aircraft carrier, which I had been on several of his. One was a Ticonderoga and the other was the Oriskany. And he was up on top of the flight deck. And so he had hazardous pay. So some of his stories and me being very young, but having Vietnam and war and President Johnson. And I don't really remember much about Kennedy. I remember that funeral on TV, but I didn't really have much of a connection to that. And I started young. They falsified my baptismal to get me to school. I was ready. So I was always a year younger than everybody. When I was 14, I started working selling peanuts on the side of the road of the beach cities by this guy who had a roaster on his truck. So I learned all about goobers and all kinds of different peanuts and cashews, and I learned all the nuts. And so at 14, I was making money, and I had enough money at 15 to buy a motorcycle. I had a driver's license to drive a motorcycle, even though I couldn't drive a car. So I legally drove my motorcycle to high school to learn how to drive a car. And then at 13, I became a scuba diver. And then at 14, I was in a movie. My friend and I were at the scuba shop playing around the pool. And a guy said, hey, I got a call here from some producer. He wants to go to Catalina Island and he needs a couple of extras. Would you want to go on a free boat trip? Of course. So we went to a boat trip over to Catalina Island and we dove in and he had the camera and he was taking our video and pictures and stuff. Back then it was film. And he found a shark, a very small shark. And he handed it to me and I handed it to the camera and moved to he couldn't see us because the mask, and we were bubbles and stuff like that. But at the 8th grade science class, we had a reel and we showed them. We could say to the kid, hey, our fellow castmate, that's me. And then the other guy would say, that's me. So it was a lot of fun. And then at 15, I actually had a job working as a diver for ship-shape divers in Dana Point. So my job was to scrape barnacles off the boats and wipe the line, the water line there, and replace zincs and do repair from the electrolysis damage. And one time I actually painted a keel underwater, which is very unusual. We had underwater paint. And so we kind of smeared it on the keel and it was kind of a dark gray. And I came back a month later to clean it and it turned to a light silver color. So it's pretty cool. So I actually painted a keel underwater at 15 and made enough money. I was making about $165 a week. And back then my friends that working at McDonald's were making about $40 a week. So I saved that all up. And then let me see, what else? So I graduated early at 17 and in January. So I had enough credits. I had taken extra classes in the summer. And then then I got a job as an insurance investigator. I lied. I told them I was 19. They looked at my driver's license. They knew I was 17, but they hired me anyway. So I had moved out of my parents' house after about 2 months of turning 17. I had my own apartment. So I was living a pretty good life there. Then after about 6 months, I got it down pretty close. I was the second most productive agent they had. And I just looked at these guys who were 40 and 50 years old doing the same thing. And I went, that's not the life I want to see. So I thought, well, I'll just do what my dad is. I'll be a CPA. I'm pretty good at math. So I went to college and to become a CPA, but I had a double major, accounting and abnormal psychology. So I love crazy people. I really do. And I say that affectionately because I worked at Napa State Mental Hospital and I worked primarily with autistic children. And back then we only had 5. And so I experienced what they experienced in the sense that I would sit down and do what they did. They were psychotic. They didn't interact with you at all. They were in their own little world. And so I did what they did. And after a few months, I had psychiatrists come over to me and say, we have never seen anyone connect to these kids like you have. I just do what they do. So things later on, I saw this one kid picking sand up and pouring sand, which is a common thing of autistic kids, and in the sunlight. And I'm going, I do what they did. I don't see anything. I'm 68 miles offshore. I'm 25. I'm a commercial diver working in the oil field in the Gulf of America. And so there's 2,000 rigs out there. It's on a pipeline barge. We lay pipe between rigs or it tied into the main line. And I was holding the diver's hose, and it could be for an hour or two. And all of a sudden, your eyes just start glazing out. The light comes up, and all of a sudden, I saw these particles, this light dancing. And I'm going, that's what the kid saw. That's why he was picking sand up, because he had his friends dancing with him. And I'm going, I got it. Sometimes it takes a while, years later, but I finally connected and went, okay, I got it. So from that, I learned sign language. What? Well, I was in a tutoring room and a deaf guy came in and he lost his hearing at 4. So I would talk to the interpreter. She would talk to him and then she would sign to him and then he would talk to me. So I thought, well, gosh, if I would learn sign language, then I could talk to him and eliminate the interpreter. So I learned sign language at City College while I was going to State College, and we became friends. He was a neighbor, and so we walked to school together many times. And I was on a bus only about a week ago, and I'm getting onto a jitney. It's a World War II Jeep, and you kind of face each other. So 9 people were like this, and we're 9 people like that. It goes like this, the way the bus drives, the way the Jeep moves back and forth. So as I'm getting on, because I'm so tall, I got to bend down really low, and sometimes it hits my head. So I don't fit the stature of a typical Filipino. So I saw these 2 guys, they were signing. I went, that looks like sign language. I sat down, my fiance said, oh, those are my friends from school. I went, oh, hi. And they went, Hi. And I said, yeah, how'd you learn sign language? I learned it in university. How'd you learn? They're deaf, obviously, and how many poor people? So we got to talk. All the people in the jeepney are all staring at this white guy. I'm this big, huge white giant here and not speaking any English and not speaking any Gaelic. And so we're signing for the long trip. And so we agreed to get together a party. So I want to teach people Gaelic, teach English, and also teach sign language. So it helps you learn a language if you can use your hands. So that's the short story. I don't know. If you want to go ask more questions, I don't mind.
That's fascinating to me about abnormal psychology as well as how was that pairing that with accounting?
Some of the craziest people I met in the math classes. One teacher was just so bizarre. I couldn't take it after a couple, 3 sessions with him. So I transferred out to another one. He was worse. So sometimes the math teachers were crazy. And when I got into psychology, the craziest people are in psychology classes. They're the ones who need treatment. So they attract to the psychology and this whole therapy thing. And so, yeah, the experiences in the state mental hospital really helped me. I always had to tell people I was at a state mental hospital, not as a patient. I had a key. I could enter and leave. So I would tell the kids that were functioning, I said, I'm just as crazy as you are. I'm just socially acceptable. So let's work together on how you can be socially acceptably crazy and not have to be in this institution. So yeah, it was great. So I have a real connection to crazy people. Oh, I'm watching another interview of Tom Waits. Now, have you ever heard of Tom Waits? He's a singer. And so I had listened to his music for the last 30 years. I loved it. And here I get to YouTube. I've been on off grid for about 10 years. So I finally discovered YouTube and stuff like that. And it came up, I was listening to a song and then it said, there's an interview. So I went, oh, okay, I'll watch an interview. This guy, he's in Australia TV. The minute he walks on, I'm going, is that guy autistic? And so the way he smoked a cigarette, because when he was being asked an interview, he would look down, eye contact. They don't like that. So the interviewer was actually going down on the ground going, hey, I'm over here, because he didn't realize that Tom Waits was autistic, couldn't take the stimulation. So then he started smoking and then they couldn't find an ashtray. So they finally found a cup and he put that in. He lit another cigarette that is typical of autistic. And then he blew smoke to cover this whole, and the guy's going, and that you don't know that until you've worked in a mental hospital and seen the patient smoke. And that tobacco really did help relieve their tension. So I went, that guy's got to be autistic. And sure enough, I looked it up. He turned autistic when he was 9. And that's where he's a little bit higher functioning. But yeah, so I can pick out autistic people from an interview.
I'm curious. So you did the double major in college, and now how did you decide you were going to work at this institution?
Oh, I was only at the State Mental Hospital as my part of my schooling. So then I decided to move to social work. So I said to a counselor, what do I do with my sign language? I love this so much. She said, oh, why don't you be a social worker? I'm like, okay. So I moved to San Francisco in the city, and I went to San Francisco State, and it was a crazy time there. And so it was pre-AIDS before that, and it was just bustling. It was producing everything. It was just, wealth was everywhere. It was unbelievable. But then when I got into being a social worker, I had about 2 classes left. I went, this is not for me. So I quit that job and went to work as an accountant. So I still had my accounting background. So the first time I sat down at the desk, the first day, the accountant, the CPA came up, the CFO, he said, he pointed a finger at my face and was angry. And he said, if you pay for a statement, I'm going to fire you. So that impressed me very much. He explained nicely, and he was a nice guy, but he did that on purpose to institute that thing. You don't ever pay from a statement. So he said that, we might have already paid that last week. The owners might have worked a deal out and you don't know that. So don't pay from a statement, only pay from an invoice. And that's what happened to have an experience like I've had that no one else has had. And that's where I related to a credit card debt. So let me tell you a quick story about that. I wrote a book on health and healing. I'm an author. I'm a retired teacher. So I wrote a book on health and healing. In 2004, I was given an infomercial contract. So I had to be test marketed on radio for about 6 months, and I lived on 3 credit cards. And I said, why would you do that? I said, well, I promised $100,000 a month. That's how much I was going to be making from this infomercial deal. So then 6 months into it, one of the talents, he got caught lying about his book on weight loss. So the FTC came down hard on him and the company. So my contract was canceled. and I was left with $85,000 of credit card debt. So that put me in a little bit of a depression. But then one morning I woke up and I remember my dad being a CPA and how I was studying to be a CPA. And I realized, hey, there's no invoice. And that's back to that story about being that with that CFO coming to my finger in my face going, don't ever pay for a statement. And I went, wait a second. The credit card statement is a checking account statement. It's not a bill. And then I remember that my class in accounting, we had our banking session was a book called Modern Money Mechanics, and it was required reading. And on page 6, it says right there what banks do to make a loan is they accept your promissory note and they write numbers into your free checking account. So I didn't sign a promissory note. I didn't get a loan, so they couldn't have loaned my money. So then I had long conversations. My father-in-law at the time was a judge and attorney, and we had long conversations about fraud. And there's all kinds of contracts. So I don't have a contractual agreement with the bank. Use the card, and you have to fulfill their terms and conditions. Not there's fraud. So I, with his help, on by myself, filed 3 federal lawsuits against the banks in Los Angeles. And if you say, did you win? Well, I didn't get a judgment with a jury. No, the judge threw me out. But what happened is that a month later, I looked at my credit report and they were gone. All 3 credit cards, debt was gone. And they never got a 1099-C, which is a thing I don't need to get into, but it's a way the banks tell the IRS that you got a loan and you have to pay it back and you get paid taxes on that money. I never got that because I told them in my pleading that they did that, I'd file a 3949A. You see, having a dad being a CPA, I was brought up with the IRS as part of my DNA. So that's how I didn't get out of the debt. The debt was never there. So that's what I discovered is I'm an accountant that has discovered that the banks were committing fraud worldwide. So good, fun little entertainment sidetrack.
Now, when you decided to switch and get into accounting, how did that feel when you first made that switch?
Well, I had left college and I needed to have an income and I was just tired of being poor and poor student. So I just went for the first job that was accounting. So I worked for Cream Jeans. These were 2 gay guys that were working for Levi Strauss that started their own company. I was the only straight there. So it was very entertaining, to tell you the least. And so they would go to Paris. They would see the latest fashion. They'd spend, let's say, $500 for that pair of not Levi, but a pair of jeans. And they would buy the latest fashion jean that was going to be the hit of the year. They'd bring it back and unstitch it, create a pattern, and take it into Chinatown, the sweatshops there in Chinatown, and have this made within a week. We were shipping pants that looked just like Paris ones. So instead of 500, we were selling for 200. So we were undercutting it. It's called knockoff. And that's just the way the industry works. So that's what, so that was how it felt, was alive. It was great going on there and things were happening. And then things turned the other way. We had the murder of Harvey Milk and there's a lot of things happening. And so when I had been in Maine for about 10 years, just recently, I was there and people had talked to me, not talking about politics, but they said they would have had Trump dead. And I went, what? Another person said, out of the blue, I want to see Trump dead. I'm like, this is crazy. I'm leaving. Because I read a book by Pearl Buck. She's a famous author and she wrote a book in 1910. And she was talking about walking down the streets of Berlin with her friend and people walking up, slapping her friend's face. And she couldn't quite understand it. And she said, she's Jewish. Yeah. The smart Jews got out. The dumb ones who said, I'm not Jewish, I'm just German. Well, so I'm seeing a trend in America. So that's why I left for the Philippines, to be with a country of happy, joyful people. And I get away from all that nuttiness, all that craziness. So I see the nuttiness and the turmoil that's happening. The fabric of society is all falling apart in America. So that's not the reason why I'm here.
I understand. How long have you been in the Philippines?
Been here 8 months. And I've been where I'm at now for 2 months. When I knew nobody, when I came to the Philippines, I did look up a website, WWOOF, and that's Worldwide Opportunity Organic Farming. And what they do is they link up farms with people who want to work on a farm. And since I had no place to stay, I have a Social Security benefit, stuff like that, which I couldn't live on it in America, but I can do very well here. And so on the farm, I have room and board. And I teach them how to build a dome house. I do farm work. And so it works out great. They get an extra pair of hands. They get some knowledge from me, and I get to eat and I get to sleep and not have to pay for a hotel room, not have to pay for food. I pay for a little few things I want to eat and buy. So I can live on $100 a month. That's all you need here to live on if you're on a farm. So then I went there and I taught them how to build a dome house, an 8-meter dome. We did that in about 4 hours with bamboo. And what happens is I leave them with a kit. They can then start manufacturing these dome kits. And when it comes to the job site, it takes no tools. It's just zip ties. And all we do is put zip ties that up goes like a 25-foot dome house with one person in 4 hours. And if you have 4 people, it takes about an hour. So there's a lot of storms here. There's earthquakes, there's volcanoes, typhoons, floods. It happens here all the time. So the culture here is they don't think about tomorrow. And they've just been wiped out so many times that they just work with it. So here's a way they can build a very quick structure in hours. And it's bamboo, it's free. So that's what I built there. And then another farm invited me north of Manila, another one south of Manila. I've been invited to go to Taiwan to do that there on her dad's farm. And another farm in another island invited me. So I came to that island and he built mud houses. And I was living in a resort for nothing. It cost me nothing, but I'm living in a resort. The houses were built of mud, but you couldn't tell. Beautiful. And it was thick and it had air conditioning in some of them don't. You have a fan, but it's amazing. So I teach how to build a dome. And then that's where we put the mud around it. And then you have not really a mud roof, but you have a covering and stuff like that. You can use metal, plastic, and different material. And it can be the natural material of the fronds of the palm trees. So that's what I'm here for. But the internet was so slow there and unpredictable. That's why I had to come here for the internet. So here I'm in Iloilo.
So 8 months. It's still kind of fresh a little bit.
Oh, yeah. What has happened is that people ask me, what did you come here for? And I would say, so I came here looking for a wife. So, disparaging, but I'm fed up and done with American women. They become feminized. The feminist movement feminized the men and maximized the women. So I am not attractive there, but a guy's 35 or 40, you have no money, you're a ghost. I like Math. I like his approach. And I was just a ghost. Here, I'm walking down the street and I get looks and they find me attractive. Oh my God. I'm appreciated. So a very nice young lady jumped off the jeepney and she walked by me and said, hello, sir. Oh, so I said, my own hapon. And she went, you speak Hiligayno? I said, well, I'm learning. And I said, ¿Cómo está? And how are you? That's a little Spanish. They got Spanish mixed in with their language too. And she said, okay, in English. And I said, Mayoman. And so I'm speaking back to her. So I said to her, Naga Pangita Maestra full of Hiligayno. I'm looking for a teacher of Hiligayno. Well, I'm a teacher. And said, great. So I gave her my number. So we connected later. So it worked out great that she's kind of like a caregiver. Let's put it that way. And so she cooks, she cleans and stuff. And that turned into a loving relationship. So it's fantastic. So now she's my fiance. She's got an extended family, which I came here for because I don't have a family. That's what most men come here for. It's just there's no family in America for me. And she's a family of nurses and of people who have owned restaurants. My fiance was in the restaurant as a child, so she knows how the restaurant is. So that's my plans also is to this free revolution. I'm going to be opening up a restaurant that's basically free food and having people pay for reservation. And so that's how they get the free food. So there's a whole free revolution I'm doing here. So free housing, free food, and free medical care is I'm all about is just the free revolution and to free you from your credit card debt.
Well, that is such a beautiful story, Tommy. But I want to transition to Chad. I'm curious what you would say is your first step suggestion for anybody listening to us and they are struggling with their credit card debt.
So first of all, mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. So I'm just asking you and your audience to have an open mind. And law is language. Language is law. So if you say you have credit card debt, you've got debt. You got to pay it. There's no way out of it. Okay. But we watch TV and we see a bank robbery and we always say alleged. So all I'm asking you to do is add one word that's alleged credit card debt. That puts now the burden on the bank to prove that there's a debt. So that's what we do is that I'm trying to say to you is you're a crime victim. You're a victim of the bank's fraud. So let's see, where do I start with this? There are true credit cards. Let's start with that. So I'm not trying to say that you're getting out of debt. This is not a get out of debt scheme. Okay. I'm not that morally, ethically, legally, you have to pay your debts. When you go to, let's say, a tire store and you want tires for your car and you say, I don't have any money. I don't have $1,000 it's going to take for that. They say, oh, Amanda, why don't you apply for the in-store credit card and see if you approve? Well, you do, you're approved. Great. They put tires in your car, you drive away. You didn't pay for that, right? You didn't pay for those tires. You didn't pay for it, but you get a statement at the end of the month, which is true. There is an outstanding unpaid invoice, which is true, and you have to pay it. However, how do we know that the Amazon card or the Walmart card or the department store card is not a true card? Look at the back. So if the back of your store card says issued by Bank of America, Citibank, Wells Fargo, Bank of London, Bank of Tokyo, Bank of any country, this works worldwide, then it's not a true credit card because the bank did not put tires on your car. They didn't come out and do a plumbing job on your house. They did not provide goods and services. They're not in the business for that. So they do not have an invoice. They don't have a debt instrument. So you do not owe them anything. Now you say, oh, they loaned you the money. Okay, that's a whole different argument. So if you want me to go into that or you want to ask a question, I'll stop right there.
I'd love if you could continue elaborating on this.
Sure. So banks are all about loans. So if you don't have any money, you want money, you go into a bank to get money. And so what happens is you have to fill loans. Let me ask you a question. If you apply for a loan and you're turned down, do you still get the loan? No, you don't get the loan, you're turned down. Right. But if you are approved, then what you do is you go into the bank and you fill out loan documents. Remember all that? You have to prove you have an income. Because if you don't have an income, then how can you pay the bank back? So the bank gets called into court, the judge would say, you're loaning money to people who can't even pay it back? That's predatory. So the banks have to have you prove that you have an income to at least pay back the loan, right? Then you also have to have collateral, like your house, your car, or if you go for a personal loan, let's say you put up your yacht. Well, the bank could legally take that away from you, sell it, make their money back. If they're short, well, too bad for them. If they're long, they don't keep that money. They got to give you back the extra. So you also have to have a credit report, and a credit score determines your interest rate. But the last thing you sign is a promissory note. You have to promise to pay it back. That's a loan. So what happens is you never signed a promissory note that never was a loan. So what happens is how do you nuke your bank issued alleged credit card debt? All you do is write a letter to close your free checking account. Checking it down. Right. Remember, banks are all about loans, right? So banks advertise to get you as a customer, right? Years ago, they would take money out of their advertising budget and buy toasters and wall clocks. And you would come into the bank, they would give you that because it was a big deal back in the 50s and 60s to have a toaster. So there was an ad in the paper I saw. It said, come into our bank, deposit $25, and we will match it in 90 days. So what did I do? I put my $25 into a savings account, waited 91 days, went into the bank, took my 25, the bank's 25, right? I had $50 I walked out with, and I closed the account. Now, let me ask you a question, Amanda. Was that illegal? Was that immoral? Was that ripping the bank off? Did I take advantage of the bank?
No.
Did I? No, that's not immoral. They said, do this. I did it. I got my money. So most people kept their money in the bank, but some people like me, there's a guy on YouTube, and that's in your show notes, the fourth link. So don't believe anything I have to say today. Look at the show notes and see that. Send this podcast to your CPA or anybody who's had one class of accounting, and they'll tell you I'm right. The only people I help are people who've already talked to a third party and said I'm correct. So what they did is, that's what the guy says on YouTube, and he's made $361 by taking money, putting it into the bank, waiting the period, whatever it is, and drawing out and closing the account. That's not illegal. So that's the same thing on your $500 bank issued alleged credit card. So they sent you a gift. Some people didn't even apply for a card. And if you apply, the definition of apply means a request. It doesn't mean a promissory note. No, just because you use the card and they have terms and conditions, that's undone because of the fraud. And that's in your third link in the show notes. So what happens is that they gave you a $500. Why would they do that? Because they want you as a customer. What's a customer? Look at it yourself. I did this 2 months ago. What is the average amount people pay on their credit card account for fees? It is $23.04. So if a bank has 1 million card holders, they're bringing in $23 million a month on a free checking account. So I'll get you back to that. So they're making money on people by fraud. About 1/4 of their profits is based on this whole fraudulent scheme, and it's done worldwide. So what did you do with your gift card? Remember, this came in the mail. You didn't apply for it. Maybe you did apply for it. So they sent you this gift card. They gave it to you. It's a gift card. Let's say you went to Home Depot and you bought a toilet, a golden throne, let's say. So you're walking out with your toilet and somebody at the door says, wait a second, Amanda, did you pay for that? And what do you have? I have a receipt. It shows it's paid. But Amanda, you didn't pay for that toilet, did you? No, you didn't pay for it. Who paid Home Depot that night or the next day? Somebody paid Home Depot. You got a Bank of America credit card. You got a Bank of America credit card, gift card. You call it a credit card, you'll lose. You'll lose every time the argument. You got a $500 gift card from Bank of America. Who paid Home Depot that night or the next day?
Bank of America.
Right. The bank. Now, where'd they get the money from? From their advertising budget. In the second show, in your show notes, the second link is from the book, Modern Money Mechanics. In there, even mocks, it makes fun of it. It says, of course, banks don't take depositors' money and loan it out. There wouldn't be enough money. What we do is you sign a promissory note and we write numbers. They can write any number they want. So they write you $500 and you use it. So if they make $23 in about 22 months, they made their $500 back, and now you're into it for the rest of your life. You were paid $23.04 on average. One podcaster told me he pays $800 for an annual fee to have a free checking account. So it's crazy. So you're a good person. You're a moral person. You're a righteous person. You got a bill in the mail. You thought it was a bill, but it was a statement. It's a credit card statement. It's not the same. It's exactly the same thing as your checking account. It just shows what you started with, your deposits, the checks you wrote, debits, and also fees, or you have an ending balance. So it's not, remember that CFO, that CPA pointed my face, never paid from a statement because you don't know what it is. It's not true. You only pay from an invoice. So that resonates back to my life, my experience. So what did you do? You wrote a check out from your bank of, let's say, Bank of Massachusetts. And that check went to Bank of America. Now, let me ask you a question. Is that the first time Bank of America ever saw your money? Think it through. A card arrives in the mail. You didn't apply for it. You used the card. Bank of America paid Home Depot, but you wrote a check out from your own bank in your own state and mailed it off to Bank of America. Is that the first time the bank got your money?
No.
When did Bank of America get your money before that? A card, it's okay. It's happened on every top podcast I talk about. A card came in the mail. You didn't apply for it. It's a Bank of America credit card. You took that card to Home Depot. Bank of America paid Home Depot. A month later, you got a statement. You thought it was a bill. You wrote a check out from your Bank of Massachusetts to Bank of America. My question, is that the first time the Bank of America ever saw your money?
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, that would be the first time. So
Yeah.
banks are only about loans. So if you have no money and you go into a bank, you get a loan from them to you. When you take money into a bank, when you send $500 to the bank, you're actually loaning the bank money. And that is in the show notes in your first link. So when you give money to the bank, add it into your open a checking account or open a savings account, you're actually technically loaning the bank money. When you spend your money, it's a less obligation the bank has. But then when you fill it back up, you're actually loaning them more money, and then you spend it. You loan them money. Banks are only about loans, either from them to you or you to them. So this is actually a loan. So every purchase you've made since then has been with your own money. Here's the scam. Here's your checking account. It's your free checking account. You put money into it and now you spent it. You get a statement at the end of the month telling you where you spent it at. But here's the difference. You have to put money back in or they'll charge you interest. It's my free checking account. I can choose, oh no, this is called a credit card. But the bank never did goods or services. They can't give you credit like a merchant could. So they're only into loans. So that's the scam. So how do you solve this? You write a letter to the bank, ask them to close your free checking account. But here's the thing. You have to withdraw your money first. If you use the bank's terms, you'll lose. You will lose every argument. So if you say max out the card, you're losing it. If you say, I'm going to withdraw my money that I had deposited in here already, that's legal. That's what you're supposed to do. Take the money out before you close it. So for most of my people I help, I can find the money they didn't even think they had. So you take the money out, you write a letter to the bank to ask them to close the free checking account. What would be helpful is if your CPA would write a letter saying, there is no invoice. If there is one, send it to me and I'll pay it. The other one is there was no loan because you violated the federal banking regulations. You can't issue a loan unless you have a promissory note. She never signed a promissory note. Then have an attorney write a letter, say fraud undoes all contracts. And I have a lawsuit. You don't file it, but you have a lawsuit. It explains everything about their crimes. And the last thing is an injunction. Now I have to kind of get to that really quickly because we know about injunctions now. Most of the people in America, if Trump does one thing, someone runs into court and files an injunction, everything stops. That's the point. So if the bank would ever sue you, they know you're going to file an injunction. If you sue them, they know that you're going to file an injunction. What that does is forces the bank to send to the judge a copy of an outstanding unpaid invoice or a certified copy of a promissory note. And you're also asking for an affidavit of debt. You're asking for someone inside the bank to swear out on a penalty of perjury, which means they go to jail or they pay a fine if they're a liar, that they actually have, you actually have a debt and they have the debt instrument. They have proof of this. If they don't provide that to the judge in 30 days, they're in contempt of court. So banks know that all you want is what happened to me, click off your credit report. So that's what can happen to you. In a quick nutshell.
Mhm. Wow. Okay. Now, is that the first step you think everybody should take, no matter?
First of all, take the money out of your free checking account. So use the card, max it out. So you use your own money. So take your money out first, then write the letter. And as best you can, I can help you along with that. I offer a free 15-minute consultation. I have a book called Forget How to Nuke Your Credit Card Debt. It's on Amazon. But if you don't have those, I can help you. And I'm really looking for a company. So a company that has, let's say, $200,000 of bank issued alleged business account credit card debt. That's where I can help them. And their board of directors have all maxed out their cards. They're trying to keep the company afloat. They're about to go under. All the employees are stressed out. So what I want to do is talk to the CPA. They'll have a big meeting of all of the employees, the board of directors, everyone's there. The CFO, the attorney, everybody's all there in the one meeting. And explain to them that there's a fraud perpetrated on us. Withdraw your money now. If you want to, we've done it. We're going to send a letter. If you want to be on the letter, we're going to ask them to click it off their credit report. And we'll see this in about 45 days because it takes about 30 days for them to click it off their credit report. So that's what happens. The CFO, it's most likely the CPA, explains that there never was an invoice and we never had a loan, and explains how we've been using our own money. It's a free checking account, but we're paying $23 on average. So we want to stop doing that. And then the attorney says fraud undoes all contracts. So we do not have a contractual agreement with the bank. All we have is a free checking account. That's what the CPA says. And he's going to be my expert witness if we take this to trial. So everybody goes, sign me up. And they say, take your money out first. So you withdraw the money. You have money now. You have no more debt. Then you say, oh, okay, Tom, you do that, you'll never get a credit card again. Well, you can ask me, Tom, do you have a credit card? Yes. I had been living off grid about 12 years ago. The wife said, get out, take the dog with you. So I became homeless on purpose. I took a vow of poverty for 10 years. And so I wanted to feel what it's like to be poor. So I traveled across the United States on farms and things. And so I came off the farm and I needed to go to the Philippines. I needed a credit card to book an airline flight. I needed to rent a car. Well, first I had to get a driver's license. I had to redo a driver's license test because I had been off grid for so long. I gave up all my ID. I thought I was just going to die there on the farm and leave me there, but that didn't happen. So here I am. So I got the driver's license, I got the passport, and then I had to get a credit card. So I have no score. I have no history. It's completely blank. So I've been gone for 10 years. So I applied for a $500 credit card at Capital One, and they gave it to me. The word is they gave it to me. Remember that? It's a gift. They gave it to me because I was a previous customer, right? How do you give somebody a credit card that has no score and no credit report? Well, I was a previous customer. They were one of the banks I sued for $35,000 of alleged credit card debt. So I'm telling you, you're going to be a good customer when they take it off your credit report because it's going to show you have good credit. So reapply, but know the story. It's your money. It's the scam. So never pay a penny of interest and never pay the annual fee. And it's good to build your credit up. That's all positive, but at least you know that it's your money that you're putting into your account. So come in with knowledge and you'll be able to be in control of your finances.
That makes a lot of sense, Tommy. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have you heard of a man named Jay Shetty?
No, I haven't heard about the name. Tell me.
So he hosts a podcast called On Purpose. He's an author, motivational speaker. It's no biggie that you haven't heard of him, but he ends his podcast with these two segments, and I've stolen the two segments from this man. So I referenced him at the beginning of it, but he ends his podcast with these two segments, and I really liked these questions. So I end my podcast with these two segments. First segment is the many sides to us, and there's 5 questions, and they need to be answered in one word each.
One word.
What is one word someone who was meeting you for the first time would use to describe you as?
Cheerful.
What is one word someone that knows you extremely well would use to describe you as?
Loving. And loving in Hebrew means I give.
What is one word you'd use to describe yourself?
Mercy, which means extreme kindness.
What is one word that if someone didn't like you or agree with your mindset would use to describe you as?
Asshole. Men are either creeps or assholes. It just depends on the degree. I'm not creepy. I'm more of an asshole. So I can be a real asshole, especially when it gets the banks and especially against when I've been up against the attorney and stuff. So, but for other people, yeah, asshole is good enough.
What is one word you're trying to embody right now?
Peace.
Mm.
Yeah. That's what I came here for, peace in my life. And I live in an environment of total peace and happiness and joy. And they'll admit to me often that they are peso poor. But then I come back and I say, you're love rich. And I always ask the Filipinos, why are you so happy? And the answer is always one word. And it's always the answer, family. So without a family, what have you got? And that's why I found in America, I had nothing. And here I'm welcomed in. I have an extended family, unbelievable number of aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas and family and cousins. It's just wonderful.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Now, that's so beautiful. Oh my God. Now, second segment is the final 5, and these can be answered in up to a sentence. What is the best advice you've heard or received?
Let's say be authentic, be real. So what you see is what you get. That's what I'm all about. Real simple.
Why is that the best advice?
I'm thinking of the one thing I said already. A mind's a parachute. It only works when it's open. So I try to keep an open mind. Listen is actually a Latin word that means to obey. So I really like to hear it instead of obeying it. So, yep.
What is the worst advice you've heard or received?
Get into debt. Yeah. You can get into debt for a car, get into debt for an education and things like that. It's not the best thing to do. A house. Because I can build a house for free with a domed house with my bamboo. So I don't need to buy anything. I can work a deal out for the land. I've had several offers and stuff. We're working on different things to own the land without having to pay for it, in a sense. That's creative financing. So there's lots of things you can do. You don't need to have money. You just have to have the idea and the desire.
What is something that you used to value that you no longer value?
Money. Yeah. When I was always chasing, that's what the white was all about. A man in America is, where's the money? And it's all a source of making money, and they would spend it. So when I took the vow of poverty, I felt what it's like to be poor. I had been to people's homes here in the Philippines, and they were so poor, they didn't have a plate. They didn't have utensils. And they're scrambling around asking neighbors to the white guy to get a plate. I said, no, you don't need to do that. They brought the banana leaf out. We put the food on it and you eat it. So I was at another person's home, a family member who apologized for the leaking roof. I said, you have a roof. You have a beautiful home. I have been places where it didn't have a roof. So I am extremely, very humble by going through that process of not knowing today you're going to eat and not knowing you have a place to sleep. And I never took charity. People offered me to put me in a hotel. I would refuse that. I would do something for them. Then they would offer me a couch or some food or something like that. So I always had to have an exchange.
Wow.
And money is just sort of energy. So my son, I have a 37-year-old son and a 35-year-old daughter. They haven't talked to me in 10 or 12 years. So he was at a daycare, I remember very clearly, many years ago. And they were in a circle. And my friend who was at the daycare owner, she'd pass a penny around and the kid would pass a penny. And all of a sudden there's 2 pennies, then 3 and 4 and 5. And they were laughing because there were handfuls of pennies. They had to scoop them up to give to the neighbor. There was just so many pennies. They were all laughing. Then she said, okay, everybody stop, hold on to a penny. How many do you have? They'd say 1. Pass the penny, you get many. Hold the penny, you don't get any. So pass the penny. That's all I'm here to do is pass the penny. God provides everything for me. I walked in faith. I walked away from everything. Try doing that. Put a backpack on. All the things you've cut, all the books you've had, all the things you have, all your possessions, you walk away and you have a backpack. And you do that I'm still got a backpack. I still don't have a home. But there's things in the future. If fiance would like to have a house, yes, we're working on that. There's things but it's from an income producing process, not income consuming. So we're not going to buy a house to spend money on. The house is going to be one part a pharmacy. The other part's going to be a restaurant. Upstairs is going to be medical offices and my clinic. Up above that's going to be a hotel. And above that is Eve's garden. So that's where we grow our food and animals and everything's all put. And we make money on every square inch. Ask the penny. And that'll give her stability. That'll give her wealth. That will give her income in the future. So she will never have to be worried about tomorrow. And when the storm comes through, it wipes it all off. We just build it back up. So it's be made of bamboo and mud.
Wow. If you could describe what you would want your legacy to be as if someone was reading it, what would you want it to say?
He died with a smile on his face.
If you could create one law in the world that everyone had to follow, what would it be? And I want to know why.
3 words, mine or thine. And when you look into the definition of Messiah, it means the promise and expected deliverer of the Jews. And deliver means to free. So the Jews had a franchise on God. And so now anyone can worship God, right? So they don't have a franchise anymore. So I would say that the franchise is now shifted over to the Filipino people. They are God's chosen people. So I don't know if I answered the question. I was kind of going one way and then it ended up to that answer. So I don't know if I answered your answer, but you can ask me again if you want, or if that's sufficient. But
I think you did. Thank you for speaking with me, Tommy.
Oh, it was great. It was a lot of fun, Amanda. We'll do it again sometime. We'll talk more about the health and healing and the things that are going on with me in the hypobaric chamber, not hyper, but a hypobaric chamber I'm building, and also the foot bath ionizer. And you'll see this online where they make color on the feet and the bubbling stuff. But I make mine out of graphite. There's no color change. You still get the electrical benefit of healing the body, but I've helped a lot of people. So that's maybe another episode. Or my book I'm writing now is on how to speak Hiligaynon in 30 days. So I figured out a way to speak a language in 30 days, and I'll have it in Cebu and also Tagalog, but I'll have it in 50 other languages. So I hope to have about 53 books pretty soon on Amazon on how to speak that language in 30 days.
That's so fascinating. I do like to just give it back to the guest. Any final words of wisdom you would like to leave the listeners with?
No, gosh, not really too much. Just look in the show notes. Don't believe me. I'm a doubting Thomas. I want you to doubt me too. So check it out yourself and take this podcast to anybody that you believe that would have knowledge and have them tell you that I'm right too. So it's always good to have a third party verification. So no, that's it. Just look in the show notes. You can find me, Tommy A. Kilpatrick, on Facebook. Contact me. We'll have some fun.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Tommy. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Manders Mindset. In case no one told you today, I'm proud of you. I'm rooting for you. And you got this. As always, if you enjoyed the show, I would really appreciate it if you would leave me a 5-star rating, leave a review, and share it with anyone you think would benefit from this. And don't forget, you are only one mindset shift away from shifting your life. Thanks, guys. Until next time.